Fuck us up with some knowledge, kid.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit podcast. Full goon squad in the house. I'm going to say something just so blasphemous. You guys can let me know what you think about it. I think Snack Chat might have run its course. Now, hear me out. It just it gets expanded. The people have made it clear that they like listening to us bullshit about bullshit. We know that.
It's my preference too.
But you could talk about your training. You could talk about the monster dump your son took and you had 19 wipes and the 2 diapers got stuck together.
It's pretty
and
wild.
There's shit in weird places.
Don't worry about it, kid.
Whatever it is. So anyways, it's been upgraded to live chat.
Life chat.
I don't know.
Fuck.
What's your life like, Hunter? Tell me about your life, kid.
Well, as it pertains to wiping, no.
Yeah, when's the last time you shit in a sock?
Is it possible?
It's more recent than you want it to be, and that I want it to be.
It was this morning. It's not recent enough.
Okay. Well, like I said,
ideally, someone sleeps exactly for how long they want to and should every night in pristine conditions.
Must be
blah,
nice.
blah, blah. Is it possible that you could potentially be building some kind of resilience in overreaching when you have some nights of sleep deprivation and then some really good nights of sleep? Something that I have been noticing recently. So I alternate nights of being quote unquote on duty with a baby. And really what that means is I get out of bed 4 or 5 times a night and take a pacifier and in the dark find the baby's face.
Better than saying find the hole like I thought you were going to say.
Nope. Sure didn't say that.
This is not the podcast for that game, Drusa.
And I have found that I'm less of a baby than I thought I was going to be with that. You kind of just deal with it.
Especially compared to the real baby.
You get used to it. But
Does that mean next time we're on the road, you're going to be nicer to me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay,
No.
okay. Checking. Just checking.
Absolutely.
Come here, sure, it's pacifier time.
I'm just going to have like a bag of Skittles. I'm going to wake up every 3 hours and throw a Skittle in your mouth.
That's what happened at the games last time.
Sure. Drew's pacifier for sure, but it's just
But
a pillow.
then the next night where I do sleep the entire time, my HRV is higher than it has been when I was sleeping normally every night. And I'm just wondering, I'm too much of a meathead not to be like, ooh, doing a little overreaching here, building a little resilience. I don't know. Maybe I'm also the other part of it that I definitely noticed when I was training a little bit more is just that tiredness factor and how much deep sleep you get. So maybe my baseline, and this actually is something from my genetic makeup, I don't get as much deep sleep as most people. I get more on that second night than I would on any night. And for some reason, that surplus on a single night is better than a little bit less every night. Thoughts?
Is that pacifier, like, my first thought is just parents, like, is that pacifier necessary? Now, how long do you guys think you're going to keep doing that for? Just because I feel like at some point you guys are
supposed
like,
to start sleep training 1 day ago.
sick. One day ago, congrats.
So
It's excellent.
How's it been?
we're moving him. We're moving him to his own room this week.
Nice.
And then I'm going to be the one that sleeps in the guest room while he's starting sleep training because Maya doesn't think she's going to be able to listen to him.
How
cry.
close is that? Is it like next, like butt to butt, like those rooms? Butt to butt, you know
There's
what
a
I'm saying?
bathroom in
Ass
between.
to ass.
There's a bathroom
Pacifier
in
to
between, like a little
pacifier.
hallway, basically.
Got
Probably 15 feet apart.
Yeah, Noelle's the same way. She had to, like, when we put Lincoln upstairs, she's like, if I can hear any sort of whining, like if the monitor is on, I'm not gonna
From
sleep.
our room,
Yeah.
it's like 50 feet. It's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
opposite side of the house.
Got it,
We
okay.
were told to put the baby as far away as possible.
I would agree with that sentiment. If you guys want to sleep, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
I was just curious. Like, we gave up on the pacifier. Well, the first child, Zion, had it until he was like 6 months, and then he just didn't care about it anymore.
Yeah.
And like Lincoln never liked
He doesn't
it.
even really sleep with it,
No,
but he
just-
falls asleep with
Got it. Word.
Yeah, and then fucking spits it out.
How's your
Back-
pacifier game, Hunter?
Different, it's a different kind of game.
That is also a different
kind of
podcast. Totally different podcast. Is my theory possible? Does it make sense?
I don't think you're stupid or insane.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, you're not stupid.
Is that a Hunter compliment?
Yeah, I guess that's things I've said to you.
Yeah,
Big smile. You are not stupid.
I don't think you're probably not doing much for yourself physically, but probably psychologically, right? Just being a little bit more resilient, having to, wake up 7 times and then you come into work and have to deal with us fucking dildos, and you're like,
Yeah.
you got there's a resilience element there.
Also, less free time on that note is very good for like headspace. And productivity too, because you're like, holy shit, I need to get this done because I'm not picking my computer back up when I get home. It's like not going to be possible
you're forced
to do.
To be a little bit more present in the stuff that you are doing. So
so that's definitely part of it and definitely helpful. Like you can get into a mode of like, especially if you push yourself really hard, life, business, training, and then you have your weekend, you can drive yourself kind of down into a hole because you're like, I need rest. And it's like, do you need 7 hours of commercial free football?
Yes is the answer.
Yes, I do.
I mean, I kind of agree though, because so we have a new schedule with the gyms with some realignments of like positions at both places in terms of coaching. So I've been taking on an earlier role. So yesterday, for example, was my first day of that new schedule. I had to be up at like 5 at the gym at 6, and then I was basically there until 11:45, came here for a quick break, and then coached the rest of the evening. So like the day was very like laid out, and I like was adjusting to the new sleeping schedule. So I had to go to bed at like, 8:45 versus like 9:45, which is my normal. So I got less sleep going into Monday. So like last night, I don't have to get this early. This morning, I was able to sleep further, and I definitely got more deep sleep and more REM sleep than I did the night previous. And I think obviously body's going to take a few weeks to adjust to the new schedule, but I definitely, I mean, it's one day, but I feel like the trend line is going to be pretty similar, where the nights where I have to get up really, or the mornings that I get up really early, are going to be a lot less deep sleep and REM sleep, and the following day is going to compensate for that. Not the most fun, but it's an adjustment. Like anything, it's just a temporary thing to kind of get through what we're going through, and we'll figure it out.
Where do we get the mats next door? So like 1-800-mats.com or something like that?
We sell mats.
We sell mats.
Yeah.
I have a purple one at home, and it's become my
floor bed.
No, no.
That's what I thought you were going.
That's right.
I put it like on its side. Basically,
blow my mind here.
Little fucking TV, because I have the TV that I watch football on is like a 90-inch television. Turns out it's not easy to get a baby not to stare at a 90-inch television.
So every wall, it's like the sphere.
So
in
I
Las
have
Vegas.
his like mat on the ground, him on that, and then the block right there. It's fucking perfect. So I can sit down, look at him, and have the football right there. It's patent pending. If you guys need
we sell ankle
baby,
mats.
Baby TV shield. Yeah, babywalls.com.
We sell babywalls.com.
Whoa. We might get flagged
check
for
that
that.
domain real quick, Ted. Is that
I think it
domain available?
redirects to Wayfair.
Yikes.
What are you guys going to do about Wayfair? That's what I want to know.
Nothing.
Nothing, I don't think.
I'm gonna get some furniture, I think.
Yeah,
Buy
probably
some furniture.
I'm
in my house.
gonna call them up and ask where the fuck my other chair is. That's what I'm gonna ask.
All right, what do you guys got? Training, crumble cookies.
No crumble cookie, but the road to Hunty Breaks a Hundy is well within grasp.
Yeah?
On the golf course. Yeah, the last 3 rounds I've played have
You
been
still giving yourself that fucking mulligan off the first
personal
tee?
best. No,
Okay.
no breakfast balls off the last couple. So and the last round I played, I only smoked 1 ball into the woods.
What else you smoke?
Pretty good. Easy guy. But maybe
kid's show.
something.
Check a cigar, guys. Come on, grow up. We're adults.
keeps you relaxed on that 5th tee. It's a real long par 5. No,
into your
yeah.
hole.
I
Do you
need
go
to-
driver off the tee every time?
No, not every
control-
time.
7 wood.
Can you control a driver?
Can't. It's getting better for sure. So I'm in limbo right now as to whether or not to focus.
Quit golf because it's stupid. Sorry. I don't know what just
Projecting
happened.
over there.
I don't know what just happened.
I do contemplate quitting once a week, and I also contemplate going professional 3 or 4 times a week. I think I could do
I like
it.
that. There's actually there's a fucking meaty segue built into that.
Yeah.
For the
Is that pretty normal for people to like
reality.
suck at hitting woods relative to irons, like when they start out? Or is that just
Typically,
like
the longer the club, the harder it is to hit. So, like a shorter
So putter is
iron
what
is
you wanna
more
go with?
forgiving for people, and then the longer the club, the more likely you are to.
Like it's so
lack
easy
control.
to blast a 3-iron down the fairway, and like it doesn't matter what wood you're using, it's not fun.
Yeah. So like something I've paid attention to is kind of like, do I chase getting a lower handicap, which is essentially getting a better, like improving the score, or do I try to hit like the club that I in theory should hit? So like off of a tee, like, you know, it's a 350 or 400 yard par 4. I should in theory hit driver to get within X distance of the green. But like you alluded to, for someone newer, like maybe it gets close to the green.
It's honestly
also
not even
it
someone
might
new.
go into the
like I
woods.
played with a lot of people in like scrambles that were amazing golfers that like, I don't know, maybe 25 or 30% of their drives just went God knows fucking where.
The debate is always like, well, do you risk, so you choose your driver, and it's like, if I hit this well, I might put it 250, maybe even 275 yards if I get a hold of it correctly, or I can hit a much more confident 170 yard iron shot. I'm almost certainly in the fairway, and I almost certainly have a good shot at the green, or I've hit my driver and I'm either really close to the green or I'm taking a drop because I just pounded that fucker into the woods somewhere. So the correct solution to get
Ted,
like
you falling asleep over there, guy? His fucking eyes are closed.
the correct solution is to probably just get better at hitting my irons, and progressively, like as those get more confident, then increase like the length of the club that I can hit off of the tee and off of like the fairway. But
I feel like at the beginning, you end up getting a better score if you just don't use your driver.
definitely, yeah, for sure. Like I could make that work.
All right, serious question.
Yeah.
If the four of us went golfing,
Yeah.
how many holes would Hunter make it before he jumped into traffic? And we have two answers. One with substances and one without substances. What's your
fun.
answer?
It'd be fun either way.
How
It'd be
far
fun.
would you make
as
it?
as long as we like kept up kind of the pace of play, like as long as we weren't
I keep
like,
it fresh. I am capable of a birdie and like a 46. Because I can hit the shit out of a golf ball.
46 on one hole.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
My range of what's possible when I go golfing
is
wild.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever used a driver and hit the ball straight.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pretty close to the same.
The only time I ever did was when I was dicking around and doing something that I shouldn't have been doing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh,
When I worked
now
at
have
the
a new
driving
technique.
range, my shot got pretty good.
Yeah.
You worked at a driving range?
I worked at a floating driving range.
What does that mean?
That's pretty fun.
Yes.
You know the food guy in Scarborough?
Now,
Is it across from that Owl's
Pleasant-
convenience store?
What's it called
Pleasant
now?
Hill.
Pleasant Hill
Yeah,
Cafe?
right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know
Pleasant
exactly
Hill
what you're
Road.
talking
There
about.
was a little lake back there, and they
There's
had
still a driving range
floating
back
balls,
there.
and I would drive around in the boat, and I would take a net, and I would scoop up the balls, and then I'd put them back in the hopper.
I've always wondered how that. I've never actually been back there.
And then you wear waders, and you wade in the water along the edge to get the balls that are stuck to the. Yeah.
I could see you
Dream
doing
job.
that, Ted. That's a good gig.
It was fun.
Friday night, I went and saw Bill Burr at Cross Insurance Arena, and I quickly realized I'm
Whoa,
so
no free ads. What the fuck?
fucking old because the show was supposed to start at 8. It started at 8:30, which is not a big deal. By the time the show was over, it was like 10:30, and I get up the next morning to come do Sweaty Saturday here, and I was like, God damn it, I am so fucking old. I'm ornery because it's fucking 11 o'clock, and I'm not like asleep for 2 hours already. The show was excellent. It's hilarious, but fuck, I just
Is
realized
it
how
new
old.
material from his Red Rocks? It's not the same.
Not the same material. I've watched that show.
Yeah.
Actually, Noel's like, who is this person you see? I'm like, watch this comedy
I
special.
thought about getting tickets, and I had stuff going on. That was
was
before
good.
my reunion.
His opener
too,
was good,
but
dude. I don't remember
heard
his
it was
name, but
good.
he was actually pretty fucking funny too. Because like I was, your openers are 50-50. I remember watching the Louis C.K. one that was, I don't know, like a year ago, and his openers were fucking duds.
Isn't
So-
Louis one of the guys though that says?
Yeah, you told me about
Yeah,
that.
he's
brings
like
on-
he brings out shitty people on purpose. He's like, it's my fucking
He
show.
wants to get the crowd involved, and like whether they're
my show.
happy or sad, they're involved.
He's like the opposite. Like everyone's like, oh, you got to be nice and bring the good guys on the road, help them build their career. And Louis has always been like, fuck that, which honestly isn't that surprising.
That's him.
Yeah.
That was a good show. It's pretty fucking funny, but goddamn, I'm like, I am old. Fucking 11 o'clock, and
I
I'm
was
asleep.
I was there for a concert like a couple weeks ago, and like I was like, we got
What
there.
concert?
It
POD.
was for who
Must
was
have been a
the
good one.
yellow card?
Oh, shit.
It was for a friend. It was a friend of a friend, basically.
Hunter remembered, but he was embarrassed, so he took 30 seconds.
I was
to say the
mildly
answer.
embarrassed. No, I was legitimately trying to remember, but
Zach Bryan.
yeah, and it was like we wanted
the fuck outta here.
I wanted to get there. Wanted to
Sam's
get
so
there at
pissed.
like 7:00 because they were like, I don't want to miss. I don't want to miss anything. We got there at like a little
even miss
before
the
7.
stage
The
setup,
doors
getting there at
open.
7
I was
o'clock.
like, in my head, I was like, this wasn't for me. Like I was kind of along for the ride. I was like, we are gonna be there so early. We were there. We were like one of the first 200 people in the building, and I'm like,
my God.
yeah. So we watched and I was like, they're not like yellow card isn't gonna come on until 9:30, like at least, and it was like 9:30, 9:45, and I'm like.
So close.
This is gonna be a
standing?
long one, boys. Yeah, we stayed. Yeah.
Did you stand, though, on the whole time?
We had seats, and then a friend had one of who works for like Norway Savings. They have one of those like
no
booths.
free ads. God damn.
So we got Norway Savings for your savings in Norway.
Are you Norwegian?
Are you
I got
Norwegian?
savings for you.
Are you Norwegian and got savings? Boy, do I have a deal for you.
Fuck.
Listen to Misfit. Use code SHERB for 15%
Red
off
hair.
your savings. Yeah.
Red hair.
Sherb takes 15% of your savings.
SHERB takes 15%.
Fuck, I need him. Please use the code.
Okay, good stuff.
That was good.
Ted, you got anything?
Ted, what do you got?
You guys ever think about how much the Earth weighs?
No. Now I do.
Because like if you think
Shouldn't
about
it
it,
just drop?
everything that's produced on the Earth comes from the Earth.
Right.
So theoretically, the Earth never changes weight.
Matter cannot
we
be created
weigh
or
the
destroyed.
same as we weighed hundreds of years ago. People are born, but people also die. And
Have to consume
trees die,
resources to grow.
What about like
die.
animals and shit? Like they
They
proliferate.
die.
Stuff. Yeah, but they
go
like,
into the ground, they
Proliferate
rot.
is the word I think I'm trying to use.
Yeah, but then somebody eats them, or humans.
A
fly
new
a
one,
helicopter
new
and
animals
blast 'em.
appear.
No new animals appear.
That's true. I guess. 'cause
Hold
you
on.
have
To
one
be
kind
fair,
of
we
species
do
and-
take gases from the atmosphere that would not
Shut up, nerd.
technically.
But then,
my
but then
God,
we contribute
climate
them
change
and
is
send
real.
them back into the atmosphere. We don't just take the gas and then hold the gas. What do we take the gas
I
for?
hold plenty of
To
gas.
burn.
Does the Earth
Yeah.
weigh more now than after the last like extinction event?
It can't.
How?
Everything is still here.
No. But the amount of life that proliferated from the point when
hard
there
word to
was
say.
almost nothing.
Right. But at the point at which there was almost nothing,
Yeah.
the animals were just dead, still on the earth. They just rotted into the earth. They were still here. They just weren't walking around like animals. They were turned into carbon.
Yeah, but you also like
By that theory, as more
We-
die, we're adding weight.
there's not necessarily like
they're
because you
staying.
could like a seed
That's true.
does not weigh the same as a tree, right? But a tree was a seed at one point.
Do we
Maybe.
have any listeners left?
I think Lao Tzu said that.
But also, Africa used to be a rainforest, and now it's just sand. Does sand weigh more than trees?
Fuck. Answer that, Hunter. Answer the question.
Do you think Earth has a max capacity? Like if
I think we're
aliens
well-
Bill
came,
Gates is already there.
No. Weight wise, do you think if aliens came and they started dropping weights on the Earth, just like it would just
Man,
fall
did
apart?
any
It'd
of
just
you
rip?
listen to a fairly recent? This is not an ad. Rogan podcast on.
Oh my god.
It was a fuck. There were
needs
two,
our bump.
two. It was
He needs our
aliens.
bump. He's
it
been
was.
going down.
I know he's been struggling. Call us
had
if
aliens
you want
on
to be
the
a guest,
podcast?
Joe Rogan. No, he had aliens.
From
no,
Mexico.
he had two guys. It was another like alien related podcast, but the two dudes he was talking to had some fucking wild stories. I wish I could remember their names.
And
but-
did any of them involve aliens bringing weights to Earth? just
No,
putting them in
not-
weird spots?
not a
'Cause
lot of-
they could show up.
not a
and
lot of
like
intergalactic
like a
Texas
billion
said-
ton weight and set it somewhere, and eventually the Earth just falls apart.
I don't think
Is
it
it
would
the ancient
fall apart,
civilization
but I
theorists, those
think
guys?
It might like shift our orbit because
I don't think it was
Get us
the
off
same,
track?
The same dudes. Here's the one question that I was like, so they were a lot of it had to do with like, one, do we know that aliens are here, that they visited us or whatever? Like, is the government hiding something, or is like a private entity
No,
hiding
they wouldn't do
something?
that.
And the one thought was like if they're hiding something because if the general population knew like this horrendous thing, it would send like the planet into mass chaos. Like, hey, we've made contact with aliens. We've like recovered wreckage,
which
we've
isn't
recovered a
true
body.
because they've tried to do that recently and no one cares.
Yes.
At all.
Well, I think no one cares because I think people care. I think people need more than people coming forward on like podcasts. They need like full recognition. Anyway, the point is like there's the idea that like we've actually made contact with aliens, and the reason that it isn't public information is because like we've learned something that is so potentially damaging that if the general population knew what it was, that it's like, for example, like we actually learned that we are actually in a simulation, or we are like a petri dish of,
it's more likely that we are.
7 generations of aliens beyond us have they're coming back. Like that's why we see so many UFO sightings and stuff. They're like checking up on their science experiment. And it's like, if that were true,
how disappointed are they, you think?
If that, it's like, if that were true, if the general population learned that they're actually like, religion is complete nonsense, like the universe is complete nonsense, like the Big Bang is complete nonsense. It's just like, actually, an incredibly intelligent life form just turned us into a petri dish. It's like, what is the thing that if the general population of the planet knew would send like the planet into complete chaos?
I don't think it would change anything.
You don't think if we were like, hey,
there wouldn't be any way to prove it. I think people are realizing now, they've wanted all this information to come out. Now all these governments are probably doing their misdirection and like, hey, look over
Tupac's
here.
Dead. Tupac's
yeah, exactly.
killer.
Yeah, they released that. Like I don't think people. I think people thought they wanted to know these things, and then now people are just like, oh, we found an alien, and someone turned it into a cake and did it as alien or cake.
So good.
Like I don't know. I don't think the human brain can comprehend an alternate reality on mass scale.
So disappointed with their project came with. Their science project's an F.
I think
are we just like, is the last extinction that occurred just like, was there a civilization just like us that was almost
Probably.
as advanced or less or more advanced than us?
say
And
like
they just got
11,000
wiped
years
out.
ago.
It was like,
That's
yep, all right, aliens like in charge. We just like wiped the slate. Let's get a new batch of humans like this.
But how
this
much does that
simulation
change
will
the
go,
reality? It could have been aliens. It could have been supposedly the magic man in the sky with the long white beard. It could have been literally
the point is that
just
if,
the universe.
If the entire planet learned that we are a science experiment in a bowl, like
So they knew the due date of like, all right, we're starting over on this date. That would cause it to happen.
Yeah, is it actually like, well, like, yeah, you guys are part of an experiment, and in the year 2100, like we wipe the slate clean and start over, and so like your
shit's over.
Human demise is imminent, like, and we have the proof that said like, what is the thing that would send the planet into
that wouldn't send us into a tailspin, because there's been so many people on the internet that are like, October 23rd is the day that everything turns off. Now, maybe if the government said it, people would take it more seriously.
Yeah, and I'm also saying like, if like, because this is all based on the podcast saying like, hey, we have a lot of people who are coming forward saying like, hey, I worked on this project, I saw this technology that we have no idea how it works. We've seen, it's like, there's this thing floating in the sky that has no apparent means of propulsion, but is moving.
Aaron Rodgers saw that giant UFO in New York.
Aaron Rodgers.
He's walking on a broken Achilles like 2 weeks later. He's got magic alien healing powers.
I'm saying,
guy. I need to find his doctor.
He's going to hang out by the ocean, listening to dolphins have sex because those sounds have healing properties.
He said that?
Did you know that with
Yes.
Marcus?
He did say that.
What if he has sex with a dolphin? Does that heal him?
And he makes
It was on
the dolphin
ESPN, so he
fast.
didn't go that far into it, but there's probably more.
Fucking pussies on ESPN. Can't do what we do. Suck at ESPN. we got the listeners back.
We got the listeners back. Yeah, I don't think there is a mechanism for this, like some governing body or a group or a bunch of fucking whack jobs saying that something like this is true or is going to happen, I don't think you're going to get mass adoption. I don't think everyone on earth will ever snap at one moment and say, I believe this. There are people that don't pay attention to this stuff at all. There are people who will only listen to the government. There are people that will only not listen to the government. Like, there wouldn't be a way.
I think if we saw a ship, like if a ship came,
I think this is more because like right now we have plenty of like firsthand accounts of people supposedly seeing weird shit or working on weird projects
haven't
with the
supposedly seem to.
Well, that's what I'm
clash.
saying is like because we've like.
I don't believe any of those people.
Really?
No.
Do you not
even
believe
a
that
little.
aliens exist, or do you just not believe that those people?
Oh no, I think it would be asinine to think that we're the only creatures.
Fun fact.
But you don't believe that anybody that's come forward with that information is telling the truth?
I think there's a gray area of like, I don't believe you, nor am I like positive that I don't, but like they're always fucking nut jobs. Like they always seem like there's also the, you know, the whole theory of other countries having different technology and not wanting people to know. I don't believe them or like vehemently disagree that every single one of them's wrong. Like, I'm just like, yeah, who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
Like you seem like you might have some problems.
Yeah. Actually, one of my professors at Bates, she was an alien like experienced researcher.
Oh, you should have stopped right there.
She like taught the rhetoric of alien abduction. It's like a class. It's a short-term semester class. I'll tell you all that about that proper education when you go there and you learn about alien abduction for a semester.
That's
awesome. One of the gigs was I had to like input information from like people's stories into the computer so she can like compile the research and write her books or whatever. And the fucking stories that you read there, just like, it's exactly what you just said. These people have had some sort of traumatic experience. I don't think it's aliens. It's just like their coping mechanism for understanding their experience. It's like, it makes way more sense that the aliens did this to me than this happened to me in my real life. It's kind of the vibe I would pick out from that. It's like a trend in like all of the stories. They all read very similarly. And it honestly seemed like it's like plagiarizing. Like, so-and-so had this happen to them when aliens touched them or came to their house in the middle of the night. This happened to me as well. So like, it's a really weird thing for me to like try to understand. Cause like, how do you all have the exact same experience when they literally feels like you like just copy one another? I think that's one of the things that makes me pretty skeptical about it is like how closely related the stories
I'm way
are.
more skeptical of the like the civilian firsthand accounts of like a spaceship landed in my backyard and some guy walked out of the spacecraft. I'm way less skeptical of the number of like people who either like worked on certain projects, worked for the government, and those things, those can be
They might have worked on those
like
things.
The Bob Lazar type thing, like can be like those things can be validated as far as like this person was, and the number of pilots specifically, like naval aviators.
But doesn't he live in like a metal dome, like under the ground in New Mexico or something?
You would live in a metal dome.
I would not.
Well, but the other thing is like the people who do come forward with information as like important as that, like their lives aren't better for it. It's not like they come forward and they all of a sudden become a celeb. They do in a way become a celebrity, but I think most of those people are like, their lives aren't necessarily better because they're like trying to be like, hey, like this is real. Like I think they get shit on and told that they're insane. To the point where it's
like if I'm insinuating that some of them are pretty silly people, their decision-making skills on like whether they think their life's going to get better, and then if it ends up actually getting better or not, it might be somewhat skewed. I want some proof of something. We have too many fucking iPhones and whatever, and I've seen enough videos of solar flares.
Seen enough history.
I was on a flight from Tokyo to Detroit.
Ugh.
And the sun appeared below the horizon, and I started to understand how pilots see some fucking shit.
Fuck, how does that happen? Below the horizon?
Yes.
Earth is flat, Sherb.
Like you could see.
It was just off the edge.
It was really fucked up. You could
Outside the
see.
coin?
Also, spoiler alert, you could see the curvature of the Earth. But you could see where the ground was, and there was some sort of like light projection that made it look like the ground was a little bit higher. essentially, like where the Earth was.
Reflection.
Not necessarily, but basically you saw like the actual Earth and then this like weird zone between it where it looked like the ground as well. And then as the sun came up, it was like, I don't fucking know what it was, but it was crazy because you could still see the horizon line. Yeah. And it was Earth, fake Earth, sun in it, horizon line. And I've been on enough like 5 a.m. flights. If you're from fucking Portland, Maine, you want to go anywhere, you're on those.
Stop advertising for Portland.
Sorry. Unknown location.
Known for their 5 a.m. flights.
All right. Alien Talk has, we're going to have to.
Sounds like you've been sticking too many pacifiers in mouths at 2 a.m.
Okay. So we are doing our yearly Athlete I.Q episode. One of the best podcast episodes that we ever did. Ted, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it is episode 201. This is from 2021, where basically I came up with the structure for kind of the bones of a lecture and then put it out to you guys to like riff on Athlete I.Q. and go sort of the 3 points of the Athlete I.Q triangle. And then there are subsections underneath each one, and just sort of opened the conversation to riff on that. Really good podcast episode. The only reason that I know that it was a good episode is because when I do my lecture on this, I typically go back and just go through the resources that we've done to try and find notes. And
you're correct. It's 201.
Episode 201. And what is really cool is if you go back and listen to the different Athlete I.Q episodes that we have done, is perspective changes. Perspective is part of Athlete I.Q. And we reference it a lot on the podcast, but we almost always reference it to the point where we're looking at experience and history and how are you going to strategize a workout and have you been taking notes and doing that. And the Athlete I.Q triangle is much larger than that. And there's almost an insinuation that the other 2 points of the triangle have to exist first. The mind and body side, these experiences that we have to actually take place for the experience to show up. Right. So basically updating perspectives, re-educating new listeners of the podcast, sort of refreshing everyone's memory on what this is. And I want to structure it in a very similar way. The funny segue that I had from before is the sort of intro hook snippet is Hunter saying, if I was going around telling people that I was going to qualify for the CrossFit Games, I would hope that they would sort of update me on my expectations versus reality. So when he tells me that his 3-iron goes 175 yards, I just want to throw it out there that maybe those 3 or 4 times a week, we might need to like dial it back and maybe you want to do well like in a scramble.
Yeah, so hold on. So to be clear, I don't have a 3-iron in my bag. Okay, you brought up the 3.
I heard 175 yards. That's what I heard.
It's my putter.
It wasn't 3. Fucking putter. To be honest,
watch this
like,
shit, kid.
If I'm being honest, like I could see you swing a putter off the tee and maybe it clears 100 yards or something.
Maybe
like that.
find out.
Yeah. What do you mean my PGA Tour expectations are not in line with reality?
Let's go to the PGA.
All right.
Go to the other one. Go to the Saudi Arabian one.
44 on 9 the other day. That's like
12 above par.
Pretty below average. Like pretty bad.
12 over on 9. That's good. Okay.
Shot
the
9 over
3
on 9.
points of the Athlete I.Q triangle are mind, body, and experience. And we actually spent way too much time on one of these podcasts talking about if this triangle should be flipped.
Upside down or right side up.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. It's either funneling down or up. I think it funnels
Bigger
down.
on berries.
So,
got it.
First glance, pretending you don't see the subcategories, I want you guys to riff a little bit on this and maybe start with the cue of we're almost always talking about experience on this podcast when we're talking about Athlete I.Q. When you think of the mind-body side of it as coaches.
I'll get going. I might have a good reason why the triangle should be flipped here, because I think
he's the one that always wants it flipped.
Am I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and for listeners, we're looking at a screen with a triangle on it. So if we flipped it, so if experience were the top of the triangle and then the two base pieces were the mind and body, my justification for that would be because you cannot experience without kind of mind and body occurring first.
So I think it's the like foundation versus are we pouring something into a funnel was the conversation we had last time.
Fair enough. Oh, I forgot about the funnel.
Funnel or a pyramid. You guys decide.
Yeah.
Tornado.
So mind and body, basically you can think of it in terms of like if you're somebody who has been doing CrossFit for 1 year, you probably you have some experience, but you are going to gain more from the day in and day out, much more of the minutia of your actual training day to day, how you're mentally approaching workouts. You're starting to learn about how kind of the ebbs and flows of training and going from I'm highly motivated, I'm going to the CrossFit games, like I've got my routine dialed in, my sleep, my nutrition, all that sort of stuff. And then 3 weeks later in the dead of winter, it's like, holy shit, like I don't actually know if I like doing this. So you're, as someone who's newer, or maybe they're just thinking about their athlete journey in terms of mind, body, and experience for the first time, like you have to have enough training time to effectively like train your body physically. We've got like things like general physical preparedness, being strong enough, being well conditioned enough, being well skilled enough. All of those things are just like, that just comes by coming into the gym and performing your training with a focus. The mind portion is kind of what I alluded to, learning the ins and outs of how you feel as you go about training over the course of a day, a week, a phase, a couple months, a full training year. Only then can you really start to put those things into perspective with respect to your experience, as far as I remember last year when we did the squat cycle, it really put me in a grave. So maybe I need to do 2 days a week instead of 3 for the volume squat cycle or something like that. And those are only things that can be learned by just putting in the hours, so to speak. So, I guess that's my pitch for flipping, but I forgot about the funnel thing. So either way, I think of the mind and body as the foundation to which you can only
This graphic took me minutes. So if I'm going to have to turn it,
how many minutes?
To me, in order to get to a point where you have enough experience to make decisions based on prior experiences, you need to go through those things by training, by focusing, by thinking about your training mentally, thinking about how you're feeling, all the kind of things that we have up.
Well, I think it's interesting about this is actually I had a conversation with you, Drew, like, I don't know, half hour before the podcast, because we were just doing our affiliate class over next door, and it was teams of 3 for 30 minutes. You had a row 500 meters and you do like a 300 meter shuttle. And, we had a big group, so we had to like shadow someone else. And I was shadowed with another guy at the gym who's, relatively green when it comes to CrossFit, but, big dude, pretty fit, in pretty good shape. And every single time I get on the rower and I'd be like 30 or 40 meters in, and then we'd be getting off at the exact same time. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, I'm not taking it easy. I'm actually pushing myself on the rower. So like I go over to Ben afterwards and I go, hey, what are you rowing at? And he goes, I don't know, man. I'm just going hard. And I'm like, so like after that, I'm like, okay, cool, man. Good talk. So after that round, he walks over to my rower and he goes, where do I look on the screen to know what my pace is? And I'm
any part of the screen.
I was like, you look look at the lines. The top one's like your meters. The next one down is your time. You're split per 500 meters. It's like, all right, cool. So we do another round. He comes back around. He goes, I don't know, like 130, 135. And I was just thinking to myself, like, wow, that's a terrible pace for what that workout is, generally speaking, if you have, enough experiences. When you're brand new to CrossFit, if you overthink things, you're going to blunt your ability to get really fit really fast. So like one of the ways that CrossFit worked really well for all of us in this room, so when we first started, we didn't have all this shit in the back of our heads. We just like, I'm going to go fucking hard today, kid. Watch this, hold my beer. And it works to an extent for a very long time. So if you're someone who's new to this whole thing, like part of the way you gain experience is through making mistakes and going at paces that are irresponsible. Now talking to Ben at the end of the workout, he's like, yeah, man, I had to fucking really slow down. I was going like 145 to 155 by the end of the workout because I hammered myself in the first couple of rounds. And he's like, is that wrong? I'm like, hey man, no, when you're brand new to this shit, do what you did today. Like figure out what your limits are, build the parameters of like what your fitness is early on. And then next time something similar to this comes up, which won't be easy for you to recognize at first, but the more you come here, the more you're going to recognize patterns and how certain time domains and stimuli like play off one another. You'll quickly dial in your fitness better. So you don't have like a couple of really awesome rounds and like 3 duds after. You'll have, 4 or 5 really good rounds, but don't rush to get to that point early on because one, that means you're now an intermediate and some of those like PRs you had when you're brand new that kept you fired up are going to come a little bit more slowly, but also you're going to blunt your ability to get really fit because you're worried about going a little too hard today, which I think is a mistake you see people getting too wrapped around the axle when it comes to like this like pacing and whatnot and a lot of things. Like you should try to go really, really hard. And if you make a huge error, like learn from it, but like I'd rather see you on that end of the spectrum than playing all of them safe and then wondering why all your peers are passing you because they're paced like an asshole over there. It's like, nah, early on, like go there and find those limits.
You're finding 8th gear, right? When you're doing that, when you're learning, when you're deciding to go hard, like just willingly, like, yeah, I'm just going to go hard and see what happens. Or you have kind of that ignorance is bliss mentality of somebody who's new. Like anytime we have a beginner or someone new who does that in a workout, I will pretty rarely stop them because I'm like, you'll figure it out. Yep. Like you'll realize like 4 minutes into this 20-minute workout that minute 20, 400 to start the workout was a bad idea. But like you learn that. And I think as athletes become more advanced and they realize how important things are, like understanding the correct pace, understanding, how to break things up and whatnot, oftentimes they go too far in that direction. And then it's like, well, what can I do to avoid that horrendous feeling of intensity? And it's like, well, like that's valuable sometimes, but you have to have the gear and the ability to go to that place, especially the fitter that you get.
We've talked about this as affiliate coaches next door. Like we try to give our affiliate members a watered down version of the pacing and the gears that we send to, Misfit athletes in class with the idea of like, this is a sustain, or this is a, sustain, this is a reach, this is a send, just kind of give them general guidelines, which is very similar to Misfit. But, you and I have talked about in the past, like sometimes we can overcoach a certain pace. And then all of a sudden you look around the room and you're like, I thought this was going to devastate and kill people today. And they're like, I paced really well. You basically scared them out of going really hard. And like some of the beauty in that is like, you want people to know what it feels like, what a 3-minute Fran feels like versus what like I did a 5-minute Fran into like a 2-mile run. Like those are very different kind of gears for an athlete. And we want to like have them experience those things. So, you as a coach, it's important to know that that's a very powerful message you can deliver someone. You don't want to scare them out of going too hard too soon, because again, a lot of the gains that you get when you're brand new to CrossFit, just by putting your head down and going to fucking work.
Another visual that we have right now is the arrows are pointing in both directions. So between mind and body, you have an arrow. This also, while being a pyramid and a funnel, Vortex, is a bit of a wheel. And these things continue over and over and over to inform each other. And the biggest difference that I see with Athlete I.Q from a beginner at the gym to a CrossFit Games athlete is there is a level of responsibility that you personally take on that grows greater and greater and greater as you make your way further down the line. We want people next door to show up. So we got you. You walk in the door and we got you. And then at the highest levels, we talk about this idea of dedicated but inconsistent. So someone shows up all of the time, but their effort is inconsistent. Their warm up and cool down might be, they might not try very hard in a workout. They just like a whole lot of volume. So it becomes more and more your responsibility the better you get to get into the nuance of this stuff. And one of the subcategories on experience is history. And what you're talking about is a potential negative connotation to your history, this trauma that's baked into us of these random workouts that we do that just put us in a place.
15-5.
And the funny thing is that place that you put yourself probably means that you did some sort of like perfect teetering on that threshold line. You went over it, you went back under it, you went over it, you went back under it. And I know of multiple top 20, even top 10 CrossFit Games athletes that completely avoid certain styles of training for that reason. And it's the reason why they don't end up in the top 5, end up on the podium, end up on the top of the podium. And it's kind of fascinating, right? Like you having the capacity to put yourself in the grave is the reason why you don't put yourself in the grave. That's weird, right? Yeah. You should be able to look at that history and be like, I can get a lot of bang for my buck here. I can go in and do this. And athlete to athlete, it's fascinating. Like some people, they think about something like a 5K row and they're like, can I mentally and emotionally stay in this the whole time? And then there are other people who are like, I'm not going to do the 500 meter row. I won't do it. Like I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And those people could have exact opposite experiences. The person who doesn't like that longer grind and that's the highest form of intensity for them goes into the 500 meter row and they're like, I can just be a big dumb animal right now. This is great. I'm just going to let it rip. Like who cares? So yeah, I find the level of responsibility thing to be really fascinating. And what's cool is all three of us get to see the full spectrum and you can start to sort of hint at it with athletes along the way. Like an athlete who's trying to make it from open to quarterfinals, there's a bit of, it's not quite just show up anymore. I need you to show up when I'm not going to be here and do kip swings and, you know, these handstand holds and these drills and all these things. So again, that level of responsibility keeps going up and up and up and up. And one of the things that we talked about quite a bit on that last podcast was the idea of at what point do you need a thermostat? At what point in your career do you need that person that is able to keep things kind of smooth for you? Because the biggest no-no across the board in Athlete IQ land is the athlete that's high highs, low lows all year long. And they're just going, I love this. I fucking hate this. I love this. I hate this. Obviously, there are some people that are real special and they love it like really often. But the idea of having the thermostat and having someone who can help you control what's going on. It's kind of funny listening to different coaches talk to their athletes with different personalities because you have some who are very much like want the like pat on the back and you're doing really well. And there are others where you kind of like read the writing on the wall and you know that that's actually not helping them because again, that's what tells them, okay, we're back at this peak. And then if coach doesn't say that my 0.05 per 500 was better on this is great, then I'm back down here and I'm in this spot.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, but I think it's one of the things you have to kind of earn through.
Is that a question?
Well, like he said, like
I just insinuated at what point
do you need a coach?
At what point is that thermostat necessary? And it isn't always at every level a coach.
Yeah,
it isn't always a coach, right?
Not necessarily, but
accountability partner.
There's the Duke quarterback. His mom tells him that he sucks. He has told him before he has a bracelet from her that says you suck. So if he goes out and throws for 5 touchtown passes, he sees it the whole time he's playing. And then Hunter's like, oh my God, write this down. Tell him I should.
Hey Siri, remember to order the member gifts for the end of the
year. And she texts him after the game. He dominates and she says, you suck. Don't forget you suck. And I'm sure there's more context to their relationship, but I just found that kind of fascinating because
that's funny. Remember Caroline in Granite Games had on her hand written, "You are awesome."
Yep.
A complete opposite, right?
Exactly.
Like, or whatever it was.
Well, and the idea is what is your baseline? Are you above or below? And what brings you back to the mean? Mm-hmm. Because they did an interview with the kid from Duke and he's like, we're playing a children's game and we get put on this pedestal. And it's not realistic and it's not normal and it's not a way to live. And my mom is like, don't forget that you suck.
I fucking
and
love
brings him back down to this place.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's interesting. And then you have other people who have it baked into the back of their head that they suck, and they probably should at sometimes be put on a pedestal. And that's one of the ways that you have to, as a coach or as someone looking for someone to help you. Like if you have, if your head's this big and you think your thermostat is someone telling you how awesome you are all the time, nah, not the case. Not going to be the best. And a lot of times that can be the most challenging situation to deal with, is someone that has been used to because a lot of athletes that cross over from wherever they were before were probably fairly successful in a athletic pursuit when they were younger into CrossFit. And, do they want to choose to have training partners? Do they want to be big fish in a small pond, or do they want to go get their ass handed to them? It's the not be the smartest in the room correlate to athletics.
Mm-hmm. I think I think your statement of like, if you are an athlete who does experience like continuously, like I'm on top of the world, I suck. Like, and if there's only like on off, right? If there's no middle ground, that's probably a good indicator that you could use somebody to kind of hold you in that intermediate zone of like, not too high, not too low. So that's a good time.
I mean, my answer was going to be basically you have to kind of earn that through enough experience where you have to realize that like you have to be successful in this sport, you do have to love it. I would say more than you hate it. We've worked with plenty of athletes who have immense talent, but just couldn't survive the day-to-day grind of like, there's going to be a lot of days where you're not the fastest, you're not the strongest, you're not having the most fun with every single piece that you do. But if you can, the trouble there is that they couldn't put off the temporary inconvenience and discomfort for what eventually would be, the goal they had in mind.
Most of those people too had someone tell them a few too many times that they sucked when they were in their formative years.
Yeah. So I think that obviously is a bigger picture into like what their psyche was like. But for those athletes, the writing was almost on the wall very early on in the experience. And, as early coaches, we thought we could help them figure out that like, hey, no, you are actually really good at this thing, but you're going to have a lot of days where this really sucks. You're not the strongest, you're not the fittest, you're not the fastest, all that stuff. But eventually, because they've been told that story so many times, that the weight of that on their shoulders was outweighed the potential, like, outweighed their potential. Like they had a very bright future in the sport.
I think you could just say one of those.
One of those
potential. No.
Potential.
Well,
but they had a very bright future in the sport, but they couldn't deal with the pressure of the past experience. So,
I want to bear some of that weight though. Could that same athlete walk through the door now and get at least much closer to where they want to be with one of the three of us than in 2013? I say yes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think that's
the experience side on our end, right?
Of course, yes. I mean, this works for both sides.
So all I was going to say is that eventually you have to figure out through your training experiences, do you need someone there to play support for you? And it's not a sign of weakness if you need that support. And for a lot of athletes, that's I can't figure this out, so I probably should just quit this thing. It's like, no, like a lot of potential. You should potentially look to get help first. If that doesn't solve the problem, then, maybe you are destined for something else. But like at some point in your training age, your training experience,
I think
find somebody that can help you.
I think the necessity for a coach or someone like that is just indicative that you have exceeded the point at which you can make like the changes that you want on your own, right? So a beginner, let's say not a beginner, but like a beginner competitor, for example, someone who takes affiliate class and can do pretty much everything, but has a lot of work to do in a lot of areas. That person doesn't necessarily need a coach, like a one-on-one coach. They need coach to tell them, hey, you should work on, a toes to bar EMOM before 2 days a week after class, that sort of thing, and start to piece together this athlete, start to clean up around the edges sort of thing. And then once that athlete has developed enough proficiency, or there's the work that needs to be done requires a little bit more nuance, that's the point at which a coach is useful. But up until that point, like we kind of alluded to at the beginning, where you're just smashing your head into the wall. Like, there is a lot of value, and there is a time period in which an athlete's like, no, like, you don't need a coach. You just need to be consistent. You need to come to the gym 5 days a week. You need to maybe do a little bit of the extra skill work before or after class or whatever it is. Make sure you can knock out sets of 50 double unders, like that.
That's the low hanging fruit from our perspective.
Exactly. That's what the athlete can do without, needing to come to a coach or pay a coach a bunch of money, where it's like, hey, get the low hanging fruit first, and then, the coach can.
What would you guys say if that
dial that in?
An athlete was like, hey, I need you to be in the gym with me while I'm doing these things. Like, what is your instant default when someone's like, hey, the gym is really lonely. I'd love if you kind of hang out with me.
I don't know that I don't have a jaded answer to this question, just because there's so many things that we're doing here, and we're working with so many athletes at different levels, that if I might be a little too dismissive of not having the buy-in. Like, you'd have to catch me on a not pacifier night to have me want to convince you to do the thing that you're asking me to help you. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So I would say part of it is you get to a certain point in your career, good or bad, where you're like, I don't give a fuck if you don't show up. Like that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And like I said, that's not necessarily a good thing. Practicing the art of salesmanship and motivation is part of being a coach.
Yep.
So I think that actually, to flip this on my answer on its head, I think next door could be a laboratory for that, for coaches to be like, if you think that this person's hard-headed, head over to the CrossFit games and get into a highly emotional situation and see how, again, persuasive you can be and motivational you can be within these moments. So I think that can be a bit of a proving grounds for your ability to pump them up a little bit. Like, it's awesome that you showed up today. And did you know that if you keep doing this, you actually are going to have the skill that you want, because this isn't that complicated. You just need to keep showing up. One of the things that popped into my head, very random anecdote, but in terms of the low hanging fruit, is like, we will program intentionally at a training camp a 20-minute AMRAP to begin the first workout that we do. And Misfit Gym Portland, you throw on Bulls on Parade and you turn it up to level 100, and you might learn something about your strategy as a quote unquote new competitor. Someone who's got that
members
bug
on fire with
like
the music right before. It's like 20-minute.
I'm convinced Rage Against the Machine was created for us to fuck someone's pace up.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's
20-minute AMRAP, everybody. Here's the steroids you need. Turn it up to 11, and that 115-400 to start was a bad idea.
Beautiful. Man, running is the ultimate trap.
Oh yeah,
you just feel so good, so light on your feet.
Coach, I was fresh.
First thing you do.
It's lovely.
Shit, you didn't do anything yet.
All right, subcategory time. One of you two will pick one of your points. If you need any help with what goes to what, you just let me know. It reads left to right. Pick one. Start on a commentary on a subcategory.
Yeah, I'll do patience. I think an athlete that is embarking on this journey has to realize it's not going to happen at the velocity they want it to happen at. And I think it takes a lot of, and this is going to go together, maturity and patience together, is that a coach is very valuable to help you realize that, like, you might not see yourself go from a 135 snatch to a 185 snatch in one season, but if a 135 snatch this season turns into a 145, turns into a 150, turns into a 155, we're trending in the right direction. And I'm sure my athletes are very annoyed with me at some parts of the year, because I'm like, you send me a video and I say the same cue to you over and over and over, and I try to deliver slightly different ways for you to think about things, to try to fix things, because in my mind, I see an athlete with a ton of potential and has all of the grit and all of the desire to be really good, but they're focused on the wrong thing. They're focused on their barbell not being heavier, not on movement refinement, because that is what's going to actually make the barbell get heavier, not the desire to want to have a heavier barbell without, it's basically like skipping ahead in the process. So, one of the things I really try to set the stage for with athletes is that I am going to say a lot of the same things to you until we fix a problem. And I'm going to be very, very slow to increase percentages or weights or complexities and movements. Even though I know you probably can do 5 muscle ups every single EMOM, I'm going to make you do 3 because I don't like the way they look yet. And I want you to work on this week.
I did that yesterday.
Yeah. And I find that to be one of the most valuable things that I provide to an athlete. And I don't know if they feel that in the moment, because it can be very frustrating. It's like, coach, I swear to God, I'm listening to what the fuck you're saying, but how do I do it? And it's on me then to be creative with how I deliver that to them, but help set the stage for why patience is so important, because you're going to have that moment. And like Lindsay's a great example of this. Is someone I've been working with for a little over a year now. And her Olympic weightlifting has gotten so much better, even though the PRs haven't, skyrocketed. But the fact is now, weights that were very, very hard for her to do multiple times inside of a Metcon are now like bread and butter, easy sport, every single time. And I'm like, I know you're fixated on the 1 rep max, but you do get tested in that rarely, but it's more often you got to do like burpee box jump overs and heavy clean and jerks over and over again. And because you move so consistently now, they throw that workout at you again. I'm pretty confident you're going to do more than you did last time. And that was the one sticking point for you in quarterfinals last year. If we can break through that barrier, that is what gets you to the semifinals. That is your big goal here. Not the fact that like in October your snatch is below everybody else's. Again, I understand the frustration there, but you do such a good job of just putting your head down and working. Stay the course, and I think that's one of the most valuable things a coach can do. And if you're not able to do that on your own, if you're not a patient person, that would be another plug for getting yourself a remote coach, because they can help you see the writing on the wall before you can see it.
Yeah, the patience thing is like, it's just that one out of all of them that you would pull out and just say like, I don't want to say this is the most important, but if you don't do this, the rest of it almost can't happen. It's not possible for you to go and do that. Like Hunter has his speech of, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself what the goal is. Then you do a 360 and ask, am I willing to do the things that it takes to get you to that goal? The piece of that a lot of people don't understand is, yes, I'm willing to do that.
How long?
You can't do 4,000 training pieces in a day, right? That's, your 10,000 hours have to be spread out. It's the physics, it's the natural order of things, it's the recovery, it's everything else that's happening in your life. So when we think of patience, it's like, I have set my goal, I have agreed to what it takes, and then I have a realistic view of what happens when I expand something like that out. And you talk about it from the coaching perspective. What I have to keep in my back pocket all year long is the plan for an athlete in phase 2, in phase 3, and in comp block 1 and 2 and into the season. Because an athlete will be working on something, especially now when it's muscle endurance season. And it's like, yeah, I literally want you to sit your ass on the floor and wait until you can do another seated legless rope climb. That is your training right now. Do you have the resilience to wait long enough to be able to do one of these again? And then it's like, phase 2, we're going to buy us gas. We're going to go into that, and I'm going to let you kind of let it rip a little bit more. And then phase 3, we're back into the sport. So having this plan sort of laid out for people, you have to show them at that level that like, hey, this is on purpose, right? Because some of the stuff that we have to do, some of the things that you have to do in training to get yourself to a point where you have capacity can either feel boring or like there's no adaptation taking place, or is it really a 20-minute AMRAP? Again, if my ass is on the ground for 12 minutes, that sort of thing. So, I feel like all three of us, there was a high likelihood that that's the word that just pops out at us, because it's like a binary thing. It's just the zeros and ones of, are you going to understand how this works? No, this is going to be a very rocky road, or the road's just going to fucking end and not be there. One of the things that I think is really important is the connection between patience and maturity. I think if patience is a camera lens or glasses that you could put on or look through and see the world in a different way, the ability to be mature and to pump up your maturity meter is much more possible. If you don't understand how all of it works, you can think you're making mature decisions in and out of the gym every day. But really, again, you're sort of in that yo-yo mentality. And
I think that having the degree of patience that you have is correlated to your degree of maturity, right?
So it's like so much so.
The more patience you have, likely the more mature athlete you are.
Right. And another from that previous episode, and Ben brought up a few times, but another Hunterism is the maturity meter. And like, if we're talking to one of our remote athletes and it's like, okay, you got to do this thing and 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 this thing. as you build these tiny habits and these small decisions over the course of a day, are you weighing and measuring your food? Are you doing your warm up and cool down? Are you actually sticking to the strategy that I asked? If someone else is in the gym, are you going to be able to hold a 150 while they hold a 145? Or are you going to start at a 145 and end at a 2 minute? Can you stack these things on top of each other? It feels weird in practice when you think about what maturity is in like a standard lifestyle sense. But if you were to then list off all of the things that a mature athlete does, I think it starts to create a bit more context and make sense. But I love the idea of something like that where an athlete could literally, like if they wanted to, you know, we always talk about if we had $1 billion, the like fitness apps that we would build for people, but it's like you hit 100% on your maturity meter today because you drank water and you did your stretching and you did all of these things. I think if you saw that list at the end of the day, there would be buy-in to that. Like, oh, I am a very mature athlete.
Well, it's the little things that you stack consistently over the course of a long period of time that give you an accurate picture of what worked and what didn't and where you were and where you are. So if you take one isolated training year and you were you were consistent across the entire year with whatever that means for you. If that meant like, hey, I do 3 pieces a day, but I got my, 5 days a week, my 1 Maffetone day, my 1 rest day or 1 MF2 day. But I did that for 52 weeks. Like you have a much more useful kind of experiment, right? You have a much more useful control study of what happens with that consistency. If you're somebody who is like takes a year, pulls a year out of their, training notebook, and it's just like, yeah, I had 2 weeks of high motivation here, and then I skipped like 4 days here, and then I got sick there, and then I lost motivation. I became a weightlifter for 2 weeks there, but then I came back to CrossFit here. It's like that would just be easy to say, well, you weren't very consistent and you didn't achieve your goals. Like, no shit. But that's all the information that it provides. It doesn't tell you that like, hey, it worked really well that when you went from that squat cycle to the clean and jerk phase, or like, hey, that linear progression for muscle ups worked really well. And you know that because you did every single piece in that progression. You gain so much more information, and that goes into like the experience category when you're able to demonstrate that level of consistency, which is ipso facto here maturity.
Yeah, and the correlation that I like to draw to take someone from mind to experience is the patience and the maturity are your link to like actual reality. And we really need to use our experience to create a perspective for ourselves. So that goes back to, if we're using the Athlete I.Q. to let Hunter know he might not be quite PGA Tour level yet. The maturity and the maturity and the patience are, again, what perception is reality, right? And if we're not living in reality, then is perspective helpful for us?
Those are the things that enable me to view the world clearly and accurately, right? It's like, it's not, so you don't have the rose colored glasses on. I don't have unrealistic expectations, but you don't have whatever the opposite of that would be.
Right. And the opposite is, so we deal with both. We get remote coaching applications of someone very earlier in their journey that wants to win the CrossFit Games. And then we have people who are fucking monsters that are going masters in 2075, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
you ready?
Sure, let's fucking go.
87 plus division.
And that's what's and that's what's tough about
the only guy alive at the end of
the weekend. Yes. And that's what's tough about the perspective that you have, right? And these stories that we tell us about ourselves. Like if you have a like actual leaderboard that shows you where you stack up against other people, and you don't want to take that mental leap to say, I'm 2% outside of the best people in the world, and yet I continue to set my goal far enough in the horizon that I won't feel like a failure. There's personal work that needs to be done where you're not judging yourself in that same way, so that you can wipe the slate clean and just be like, I'm basically already there. Like me being in 9th and going to the CrossFit Games or 11th and not could literally be the universe deciding that there are double unders or not, or pistols or not, or something like that, right?
You just said double unders. You could have said there. That'd been fine. You could have stopped after that one. You need to add.
You could survive.
You could
survive. You could survive double unders.
Everything.
Box jumps.
If no one watched you. If somehow you could be filmed and judged with no one watching you, I think
CrossFit.
you would be fine with double unders. Pistols.
The Yibs kid.
Doesn't matter if you're airplaning with 100 people watching.
I'm going to see Aaron Rodgers' surgeon. Tell him to cut my ankles open.
You got to go by the ocean.
Got to go to the dolphin.
Yeah.
Bang a dolphin, have better ankles.
Say bag of dolphin.
Yeah, bag one.
I'm going to get you a bag of dolphins.
Bag of dolphins. Anything else on maturity, patience, expectations, dedication,
I'll
life?
touch on the expectations thing. I think that's a pretty important one for athletes, and we kind of alluded to it with the maturity and the probably more in line with the patience thing. So one of the biggest mistakes is athletes do a pretty good job of coming up with a goal, whether it's like, I want to go to semifinals, I want to go to the CrossFit Games. The next step of that is like, how long do you think that's going to take? And we had a good example of an athlete who was at our gym for a while, who performed really well in the open, has a couple sticking points in quarterfinals with some gymnastics movements. He worked super hard over that next year, and then quarterfinals came around, and I don't know if he had the expectation going in that he was like, I think I could go, I'm going to go to semifinals, or if it like, as his confidence increased over just the course of the month competitive season between the open and quarterfinals, it's like I have a good round of golf. It's like, oh, maybe I'm not quite as far from the PGA Tour as I think I am. It's like,
and we're checking a lot of scorecards, not just one.
Yeah. Exactly. And then it like became apparent that like he performed very well. He performed better than he did in the past. And at the end of the weekend, he was like 500th in the North America. And
it's so fascinating too, because we're like, you went from 900th to 500th. That's incredible.
That's about what it was.
I
and
suck.
It was like you didn't have, whether it's on a coach, and he just had us as like affiliate coaches, but I had to have a conversation with him. It's like, was the expectation realistic? Right. So it's like, and it probably at least partially due to just like ignorance, basically,
sure.
Like, just not knowing that like the leap you have to take from 500th to 200th is pretty fucking big. The leap you have to take from 200th to 60th is fucking massive. And it's like, you don't know that without having gone through the process, but that is another area where maybe a coach is beneficial, or having a conversation with them.
But this is devil's advocate. This is a coaching slackline. If he didn't think that was possible, would he have come in 600th instead of 500th?
Right, sure, exactly. And it's like, you have to know the line as a coach between saying like, hey man, I don't think your expectations are realistic, and just being like, all right, man, that's a great goal. Let's focus on this quarterfinal workout. Yep. Here's the strategy, and we'll see what happens with the leaderboard. And luckily we didn't have that conversation until the end of the weekend when it was all said and done. And then it was easier to say like, well, like, hey, you did objectively move massively in the right direction up the leaderboard, but like, this is just kind of that indication like, hey, this is a process that takes a lot of time. And like, maybe now that you understand like the jump that was made, you also were very consistent over the last year. So now you have, like we were talking about, you can pull that 1 year out, look across it and say like, yeah, I was very consistent. These are the things that move the needle. What things do I need to do next year to move the needle that I didn't last year? And like, you keep iterating on that process, and, and that's going to happen every year. But having the appropriate expectations regarding where you are, where you want to go. And a lot of times it is the time factor. It's like, okay, so you're fine with being quarterfinals level now, and you're fine with putting out into the world that you want to be a CrossFit Games athlete. Are you fine with that taking 5 years? Right. Are you fine with that taking 6 or 7 years? Are you fine with coming within 1 point of qualifying for the CrossFit Games and then taking 30th the next year? Like, those are questions you're not going to be able to have the answer to, but that is the reality of the journey that you might go on.
Yeah. I want to hit on the dedication piece one more time, just to sort of re-explain or look at it through a different viewpoint on how much personal responsibility comes into play with dedication as you improve and get, closer to the tip of the spear. We want the baseline for this, the left side of this spectrum is we do 3 weeks of 3 beginners classes. That's 9 classes. The ultimate form of dedication within the beginners class at our gym is 9 for 9 attendance. You show up, like they're obviously good effort and attitude is part of that. But at that point, good effort and good attitude for 6 of 9 classes does nothing for your momentum in comparison to showing up. But then as we move up and up and up, it's like, okay, I do need to learn how to do an extra piece 5 days a week. And then you keep going up and up and up. And it's like, I need to do double sessions 5 times a week and an MF2 session on an active rest day and potentially some swimming and stuff. But then, there are, 5,000 athletes in the world doing something like that, something to that effect. So if that's the case,
someone's willing to,
and only hundreds go to semifinals and then only, 80 go to the CrossFit Games or however many, 200 when you add in the teams and other divisions, you start to see it's not enough yet. That's not what dedicated means. And then dedication starts to get really granular. We start at the macro, we work way down into the micro, and we see that we need athletes, again, pointing to that maturity meter for all of these tiny decisions they're making throughout the day. That is the sign of dedication at the highest level. My expectation is not to just show up. It's not to just do the Metcon. It's to show up, prepare, put the blinders on and do the Metcon in the way that I know this is going to improve me, be able to cool down, be able to know, felt a little bit of a tweak here. I got to spend some extra time on my shoulder after it. It gets really, really granular the closer you get to the tip of the spear. So dedication, I think, starts a certain way and gets a level of complexity and intensity to it as you go up. And I think that's really important. And the physical correlation that I can draw is what Sherb talked about earlier with that history of pain in a workout. We see a lot of athletes that think once they've been done, quote unquote, too much CrossFit, it's like, if I hurt, I did as good as I could. And if you get fit, it's going to hurt like with a half-assed effort, probably in a lot of instances. So that's another way to think about it. Like you have to get the ante gets upped in all of these situations over and over and over.
Pain's the baseline.
Yeah, it really is.
Everybody hurts, and it's who wants to hurt the most. Cut that in.
Truth. All right. We'll spin the wheel again here. You guys want to go experience or body?
Let's go body. Finish with experience.
Is it a funnel? Is it a wheel? Is it a pyramid? Body. We're building the base of your pyramid. I'm going to start with GPP here, and
you fucking would.
I'm going to start with GPP. Loser.
Fucking loser. Choosing the easy
When you
one.
go to our website, this is actually, I'm going to be like really honest and blunt right now. This is a removing a layer of business person, coach to go into this territory. There is a level of responsibility as an athlete following misfitathletics.com that doesn't have a remote coach that I think can be really challenging for some people. We are locked in on off seasons for the most part, being it cannot be one size fits all. So this idea of having to choose in certain moments, what piece should I do? Should I be scaling? We tell you something like it's a 95 pound barbell scaled down as 75 or 65, that sort of thing. That stuff is all available on the website, but there is a level of responsibility that we ask for that I think is very unique to our program, but it is necessary for you to be able to work on the things that you personally need to work on. Each program gives you a baseline of what we think every single person needs, and then extra stuff to go in and choose. And again, that can be challenging, but there's a level of responsibility there. Now, how this plays into the GPP side, and will trickle into education when we go on to experience, is we have MF2 sessions, we have sustain, reach, send. We have 1 rep max lifting. We have volume lifting, skill lifting, speed lifting. There are all of these categories that we go down through, and they are our tools, also gas, cardio, muscle overload. These are our tools to create GPP. If an athlete has to have that personal coach in the back of their head to choose those extra pieces, they have to know what all of those things mean, what they personally need. That's why we harp on phase 0, quote unquote, type stuff, athlete baseline testing year round. If we get a gap week in there, we're throwing that back in because we have to check in. We have to figure out we have to help you figure out what you need to work on so that when those categories pop back up, you go, okay, this is what I need. I know this is what I need. They told me by categorizing it and then me doing significantly worse than someone that I'm normally fairly well aligned with. Like, the GPP side of things is striking the correct balance. So your options in terms of achieving that, especially on our website, are remote coaching or, again, a bit of humility, a bit of maturity. Can I remove myself enough to realize that I need to go there? When I think of GPP, my mind immediately goes to project up the array of all of those words that I just said, and what am I doing? What am I pulling out to then actually go and execute on? That's, to me, what GPP means in the Athlete IQ triangle.
I'll go with skill, kind of going back to patience, expectations, maturity, dedication. I think at some level, an athlete looks at skill work and is like, all right, what's the heaviest or most complex version of this thing that I can do? And that's a trap a lot of athletes fall into. And a great perspective here is recently we did the double kettlebell clean and jerks. And I got a couple of videos sent my way, and I was just like, you can now brag you have the heaviest, ugliest kettlebell clean and jerks I've seen on the website recently. Now, what I want you to do instead of that, again, you should be proud of the fact that you can do what you're doing. I'm not saying you shouldn't be proud of that, but when it comes to skill work, I would far rather see you go lighter and really adopt the mindset of a beginner and thinking about a kettlebell, for example. If I get tossed into a competition and all of a sudden this kettlebell front rack that I thought I could get away with is now taken away from me, and I've never, ever practiced the right way of doing it, what are the chances that on the fly I'm going to be very efficient with that? And I said, my perspective on something like skill is basically quit making it easy. Find the most difficult and honestly slowest trajectory towards developing a skill, because it's going to pay off in the long run. If you can make a skill more challenging than it needs to be through, proper bracing or, the speed at which you're moving, you're going to find that when they throw you the bone of, hey, you can do it by any means necessary, you're going to be able to beat your competitors because you trained it the harder and more difficult way. So having the patience, the maturity to realize that yes, my ego says I want to go the heaviest, I want to go the fastest, I want to do the most. You're better off in an element of skill work to be how perfect can I make these? And how can I find avenues for development that put me outside of I'm going to send the assault bike sprint and put myself more into all right, if I were a kettlebell, I don't know what they call themselves, kettlebellist.
If I were a kettlebell, children's book by Matthew Sherburne.
I'm writing it. Kettlebellist, kettlebell master, whatever the fuck you call yourselves, or a gymnast.
This took a turn.
Yeah, whatever. If I was one of those folks, how would they do the movement? And how close can I be to mimicking that? So you get a bar pullover, you get bar muscle ups, you got to practice triple unders. You're a student of the game and you're going on to YouTube and you're figuring out what are the tips and tricks and things they do that allow them to become the person that can do, 500 triple unders in a row. And how do I turn my 1 triple under into 5? Or how do I turn my 26-pound kettlebell clean and jerk into 53-pound kettlebell clean and jerks? And if you have the patience to do that and really learn a skill, as opposed to just wanting to be the strongest and heaviest at the skill or the most reps, you're going to beat your competitors because you have that maturity, the patience, and now the experience through developing an actual skill, as opposed to being the one that has the biggest number on a website on a random Wednesday in October.
So the last bullet point is recovery. If you're not looking at the pyramid here, so you got skill, recovery, GPP, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's going to encompass all things recovery, nutrition, sleep, hydration, all that sort of thing. So
what we call at the gym the other 23 hours.
Yeah. So this one is This one, like the others, kind of evolve the more experience you get. So we'll take the 9 beginners classes for the 9 beginners sort of thing.
Yep.
Your like the metric for success there might be educating an athlete on what you should eat. Like period. Like just how because you can like raise your hand on the podcast, listeners, if you were ever taught like how do I fuel myself as a human being correctly, optimally, ideally? And like I can't put my hand up for that until I dove into the CrossFit stuff, but and then all the way to a CrossFit Games athlete who has like nutrition is like that's the easiest thing, right? It's like I'm probably eating the same thing 3-4 times a day, whatever it is. I've got my sleep, and now we're reaching into the more advanced stuff like am I doing a cold plunge? Do I have deliberate heat exposure, like those sorts of things. And I think the biggest pitfall that people fall into is that when they, especially newer competitors or athletes who essentially they jump too far ahead, they forget that there is kind of a hierarchy to recovery. I don't care if you have a $4,000 cold tub if you don't get 8 hours of sleep, right? So it's like we have to understand that there's a hierarchy to like the importance of these things, not necessarily because one is more important than the other, although I think we probably could rank order those things, but it's more about like, hey, again, low-hanging fruit. Sleeping for 6 hours a night, but it's like, yeah, but I cold plunge in the morning. It's like, I don't fucking care. It's probably hurting you more than it's helping you. Like at the end of the day, when we start to stack those things onto each other.
Should I be sleep deprived and freezing cold? Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Recipe for growth.
Stressed due to sleep deprivation and stress due to the cold exposure. So like putting those things into perspective for athletes is or just as the listener is super important. Things like the foundation is, for me, it's like, I don't know, maybe this is a good question. Would you prioritize sleep or nutrition? I would probably go with sleep, but I think like you could argue in either direction. But
it's funny.
I don't think
doesn't need to be.
I think its order of operations is more important than
that's what I mean. If I've got an athlete and it's like I can only do one thing really
hormonally going to be all over the fucking place. Blood sugar is going to be trash. If you don't sleep well, it's going to be much more challenging to make good decisions about your diet if you don't sleep.
Exactly. So boom. Yeah.
It's funny you say that. I usually, with the beginners, I talk about the nutrition versus exercise thing. And I'll be like, listen, if you want a full disclosure answer here and honesty from me, if I had the opportunity to fix the way you eat or help you exercise the rest of your life, I'd tell you to quit your gym membership right now and go eat better. And that seems like a terrible decision as a gym owner, but I'm trying to give them the honest opinion of what's actually going to make the biggest change in their life.
Luckily, though, there's a symbiosis between the two. One makes you want to do the other.
And I describe that's a really important thing. It's like, I'm not saying quit your gym membership realistically. Right. I'm saying like, if you really want this gym to work for you, you have to pay attention to what you're putting in your body. And because I come from the angle of like, hey, if you're picking one thing or the other, like gym or eat better, I sound more genuine there because I'm really trying to be genuine. That's going to be a better protocol to getting you healthier is fixing the way you eat first, because you spend 1 hour a day at the gym. You spend, 3 hours a day eating or whatever it is throughout your day. So let's talk about what actually changes you for the better. Let's focus on the things that should be baseline, but because of our information age and where we live here, you've been told this thing's healthy, that thing's healthy, this isn't healthy, that's not healthy. And it's very confusing. So when I have someone brand new in the beginner's class, I try to explain to them like, hey, this CrossFit stuff does work, but you're going to have to make sure that you pay attention to how you're fueling your body and the other things that aren't, what supplement should I be taking? Because I get a quick question almost every single beginner's class. What supplement should I take? And I'm like, do you sleep and eat? And the answer is, often not.
Meat and vegetables in your bed. Those are the supplements you need.
Meat and vegetables in your bed?
Maybe. If it
were.
If
I were a kettlebell.
If you got a pick.
If I were a kettlebell.
I would eat meat and vegetables in my bed.
ChatGPT to write that children's book.
Ted, make a note.
I bet
if I were a kettlebell, that's children's book.
Write a children's book titled. Ted's definitely doing it right now.
Right. That'll be the close of the podcast.
Yeah, so we're thinking about the kind of most important things when it comes to recovery: sleep, nutrition, hydration. Until you have those things dialed in, you don't have any business going into, I would argue, even like the supplements, like the next most basic thing, just like post-workout recovery. It's like, I don't care. Like, again, doesn't matter if like whether or not you got your protein shake after your workout does not matter if you're going to bed and getting 6 hours of sleep and you want to be a competitive athlete. You want to be a competitive athlete, or you want to be like optimally healthy, or sick, well, fit, whatever, however you want to think about it. And then also for, let's say that you are somebody who has those things dialed in, I would say the next layer to that, the next level to that is the like things like mobility. So athletes will all too frequently prioritize adding a training piece versus sitting in the bottom of a squat, for example. It's like, why can't I snatch? I should do more snatching. It's like, you can't snatch because your arms don't straighten over your head. Like, more snatching is not going to help with that. Sitting in the bottom of a squat, an overhead squat hold, working on your back, working on your shoulders, those sorts of things, that's what's going to move the needle for you. And ultimately, like those recovery like items, there's a shitload of them, and two, kind of ordering them in sequence is challenging. And it's also not, like, more often than not, like none of this stuff is all that appealing, right? It's not sexy. There's no good story behind it. There's no like, I trained 6 hours a day for 3 years and I finally got to the CrossFit Games. It's like, the reality is, it's like, no, I was just consistent in the gym for 6 years. My life was boring as fuck. I ate the same thing every single day. I went to sleep. I got 8.5 hours of sleep every night. I always woke up and drank 16 ounces of water with salt. It's like, it's those boring, monotonous things that you do over and over again that build the habit. And when it comes to recovery, like ultimately that is what is enabling you to train, which is what's enabling you to meet your goal.
Next side tangent idea. The 99 and the 1 lecture, but in a form that gives the coach the ability to give that lecture on their own. I don't know if that's a podcast. I don't know if that's an article, PDF.
Just inceptioned me. What?
So we, the topic that we're talking,
that 99.
Yeah, the topic that we're talking about right now has evolved in terms of how we put this information out to affiliate athletes. The level of complexity to what an athlete should be doing, your everyday gym goer, has dropped considerably to be like the 99 and the 1 is the 99 is all of the things that you were just alluding to. And the 1 is the tip of the spear, the ice baths and the supplements and
Squeezy
the
boots,
Normatec boots and all these different things. A Team Misfit affiliate coach should have the resources to be able to give that conversation.
I see.
Yes. One anecdote on the skill side, something that I've been working on with an athlete recently. CrossFit Games athlete, snatches 180, 185, wants to snatch 200.
It's Sherb. You don't have to hide it.
Basic CrossFit Games, never mind.
Very used to grunt work. My physical exertion and effort and intensity is how I, pour into the bucket that then overflows and lets me go to the CrossFit Games. Already strong, has the information, but the lift isn't quite as technical as it should be. If everything, or if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, comes into display here, and you can't effort your way in terms of like the intensity, like assault bike intensity or grinding through a squat cycle intensity. You can't effort your way to fixing this problem, right? And it's just this idea of thinking about, like, we've put out the intensity toolbox in the past, and if you're watching a medical show and they're doing, scalpel, tweezers, clamps, and the guy just said hammer.
That show. I'm watching that fucking show. Sign me up. We're gonna.
It's a bit of a problem, right?
ER?
So knowing what tools you need to have to be able to switch back and forth in these different moments, having the idea of, like, especially if you're a high level athlete, like some of this stuff is going to feel like it's not going to do anything because you're just so used to, again, putting in the level of effort that it takes to get there. But it's like, we need to like become as focused as possible and dialed in. And I literally wrote like these cues on a whiteboard, and it's like, I want you to read these words So it's a set of 5 snatches before every single one, and think about it. And now your set of 5 takes you, 90 seconds instead of 30 to be able to go in, because this is the only thing that's going to fix this, is having intensity
of focus
in a very different way. Yes.
Yeah, intensity of focus versus intensity and, breathing heavier, muscles burning.
All right. Everyone's favorite point of the triangle or butthole of the funnel is
funnel butthole. All right. Let's get off the rails. Down to the funnel butthole. We are.
Could be front, could be back. I don't know.
Front butt?
Front butt.
Experience. Subcategories: education, history, and perspective. Go. This looks glitched. You guys were locked with your head turned sideways.
Oh, I knew if we waited long enough, Sherb would go first. So
all right, I'll go with education. I think when it comes to experience, you have to understand what you are getting into as you're getting into it. I think one big mistake athletes have is they don't understand maybe the full picture of what it means to be the athlete they want to be, and they need to spend more time. Like, nothing irritates me more as a coach, and I have to, come to grips with it next door at the affiliate level. Like, hey, people are coming in for an hour of fitness, trying to get, breathe a little heavy and have a good time. And, I've sort of set that aside in that sort of part of my life. But as a coach of, remote coach of athletes who are aspiring to do big things, if they come to me with a problem that's like, hey, you just didn't pay attention, read up on it or learn about it before you started doing it, that's going back to I'm going to meet you at the 50-yard line. I'll go 50% of the way, you will go 50% of the way, and together we're going to do something special, but I'm requiring you to do your part of the research. So it's I don't know what my 5K pace is. I don't know what pace we should go in a 30-minute workout. And it's go back and watch.
Today's a 5K row day.
Go back and watch some of the other CrossFit Games events, or watch a semifinal, and you look at the front runner who's they're talking about in the first 3 minutes of the 15-minute AMRAP, and then go look and see where they finish in the end of the workout. And these things are really important in kind of ways you can have experience through watching someone else that can inform how you are going to potentially do in something as you move forward into your trainings or you're competing. So learning about the sport and learning about how your body works is a humongous part of what allows you to have the correct pacing and the expectations going into workouts. But you have to step up to the plate and be willing to do that on your own. And I think the ones that have the most success in the sport are also some of the biggest nerds in the sport, because they know exactly, you're like, all right, what was regional workout from 2012 and who came in third? And they're like, this person at this time. You're like, what the fuck? How did you know that? It's I'm a student of the game. I pay attention to things. So I think the educational component is a very big part of experience, and it might be difficult for some athletes to go in there because that might not interest them in the beginning. But if you really want to reach your goals, you have to be a student of the game.
That right there. What just happened is why you got to let Sherb cook. He just touched on 47 vectors of education within one. You can't give him something to read. You got to let him go. And that's why I think these end up being better podcasts, because again, you're pulling from a million different places, and the three of us are going to spit out similar things in very different orders with very different connections. I would like to see you follow that up, maybe pull a piece out of it. Yeah.
That was some Pepe Sylvia.
That was Pepe Sylvia.
The perspective. I think perspective becomes increasingly important as you spend more time in the sport, or just in obviously any endeavor, but CrossFit. Going from, it's really easy. We were finding a 1 rep max snatch yesterday, and I had a bad time. Didn't set myself up for success very well over the weekend. Just was physically active, didn't sleep all that great, and hitting 83% of my 1 rep max for a 1 rep max was not super exciting.
175-yard drive.
175 yard 3 iron. Fuck. But with the athlete that I was lifting with, Will, he's typically comes in, he's just we'll see what happens today, and he ended up PRing by 10 pounds. And we were joking afterward. He was like, so what's it going to be, another 5 years until I PR? And I was like, yeah, idiot, welcome to the club. It sucks to be down here. But he's been doing it for long enough that it's there's a pretty good chance that you don't PR at the end of the phase. Not because you haven't put in the work, not because the program was wrong, not for no other reason than the fact that you've been doing this for long enough that you don't get PRs every time you test something anymore. obviously, as the longer time you spend, the more sporadic those PRs come. So taking kind of like having an understanding of like where you basically increasing your time horizon is how you kind of create that perspective. So if we think about it in terms of, I did not PR over this 9-week training block for Misfit Athletics, therefore I'm not improving. It's like, so you've picked 2 data points on a 5-year, let's say you've been doing this thing for 5 years. Like you picked 2 data points 9 weeks apart across 5
Stories
times
written.
52, 250 some odd weeks of training. It's like, that's the wrong perspective to think about that from. Instead, you have to, especially again, as you kind of spend more time in the sport, you have to take those perspective shifts and think about them in a larger time scale, whether it's between PRs for lifting or things that are a little bit less intuitive, things like movement quality, things like, I used to only be able to do sets of 3 muscle ups when I'm tired, and now it's 5. And those things don't necessarily show up immediately because we don't often test things in such a way that's like, think back to 4 years ago, how many muscle ups did you, it's like those things are hard, and it requires the athlete themselves to like kind of pull those sorts of progress points out. And so I think just having the understanding that like there are so many ways to measure progress in a sport that so many different things over the course of years and decades for some people, that having the ability, the maturity, the, everything on the triangle, et cetera, to have the perspective of like, am I actually not getting better, or am I just looking in the wrong places? Is my mood and my mindset colored by something that's negatively impacting me right this minute, but is not necessarily indicative of the past 2 years of progress that I've made, or whatever it is. So keeping that perspective is super important, especially the longer time you spend in the sport, because you'll get to a point where it's like, you still might be trending upwards, but maybe you finish lower in quarterfinals than you did last year. It's like, I finished 20 spaces lower. Am I less fit? It's like, well, if you finished 200 places better year 1 to year 2, and then another 100 places, and then another 50 places, then another 60 places, but you step back 20 places, like, can you actually say that you're not making progress? Or are you, is that the wrong statement? Is it like, well, last year I finished here, this year I finished there, so I didn't get better on the leaderboard, but the odds that you didn't actually progress are pretty small.
Yeah, this is for me another plug to read the book Mindset. And
is that Jim Aframo?
No, it's Carol. I looked it up to make sure.
From HR?
Carol Dweck. I mean, it's got that vibe. So actually, yes. No, but yes. Talked about it before on this podcast, but just the idea of identifying the areas in your life where you do have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And while you were talking, it's like, okay, it's very important in your personal life, but we'll leave that out of this for now. If I created the same matrix for the intangibles that I want to have as a human being, if I replace that with snatching, rowing, all of these different places, while he's talking about his Wonder at Max Snatch Day, my mind, I'm like, oh, fucking please just go in there and, lift more weight.
Put some fucking Rage Against the Machine on.
And then if I started that conversation and was talking about like a rowing interval bitch work piece and how I couldn't do X, Y, and Z, in Hunter's mind, it's just sit on the rower and fucking, you know what I mean? Like get after it. Pulling the rower. So identifying these areas of where you are fixed and stuck. Because we see, the amount of people at the like highest level that work all year long on their strength and technically fix their lifts and then just go to a snatch pull or a clean pull on what would have been the PR, because in their mind, there's no growth mindset there. It's like, this is what I lift. This is what I've always lifted. I've been stuck in this place. Like how much of Will's PR was like, fuck it, we'll see what happens. Like that kind of thing. So, go through all of them, lay out all of the categories, all of these different places. It's like, if I know that just from my personal mindset that I can How is it possible for me to lift more weight but not go faster on a rower? How's that possible? Like something is stuck there in going into that. And I think having external non-CrossFit education within that way, and then coming back and listening to, it's not a coincidence that 2021, we did an episode on Athlete I.Q. 2022, we did an episode on Athlete I.Q. We're back in 2023. A lot of the stuff that we have said within this podcast is different because we are, constantly updating, changing, developing new perspectives. But to me, when you look at education history perspective, just because Sherb and I had that conversation before the podcast, there's a new lens to it. It's almost like sometimes this is bad. Sometimes you develop a narrative through one single thing that happened and you lock in on that, and that determines how you're going to do for the rest of your career.
Things are neither good nor bad. You have to realize that they both can be fuel in your tank and, gas out your tank.
The parable with the maybe, the guy loses his horse. You guys know that one?
ChatGPT, what is the parable about the horse?
Guy's horse runs away. Yeah. Everyone in the village is like, this is so bad. He says maybe. It returns with a bunch of wild horses. So now he has like 10 horses and they're like, this is amazing. He says maybe.
Yeah.
His child is trying to break one of the horses, falls off, breaks his leg. Everyone comes in, so this is terrible. He says maybe. The recruitment officer comes around and leaves his son before going to war because he broke his leg. So it's just this idea of going back and forth to like, we got to let this whole thing play out. Right. Like maybe you getting embarrassed at Beast of the East for having the worst rowing 2K of all time for someone your size and fitness level to now when games athletes show up in town, you can row with them. I am terrible. This sucks. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Fuck. Rowing sucks, though.
All right, I'll break Sherb's leg. Come over here.
If I were a kettlebell, he wouldn't be able to break his leg.
Do we have that story yet, Ted? If I were a kettlebell? Is it a short story?
It is written.
All right, awesome. Let's go. This is the outro of the podcast.
I don't know if it's any good.
Let's find out.
Can't be bad.
So it's called If I Were a Kettlebell. Do you guys want me to read the illustration prompts to really paint the picture for you?
Yes, please. I want the full picture of this.
Yeah,
All right.
That.
A magical land of floating islands, each representing a different aspect of health. In a land where dreams and reality blend, Kenny the Kettlebell was a unique kind of friend.
That's sick. Fuck.
Kenny has a dreamy bubble showing him his different objects. If I were a kettlebell, Kenny mused aloud, I'd show the world how to be healthy and proud. Kenny turns into a vibrant fruit tree. If I were a tree, I would bear fruits so fine, eating them daily makes your inner light shine.
This is fucking terrifying.
Did Steve Rule write this?
This is fucking terrifying.
Kenny has a soft, fluffy cloud hovering over a bed. If I were a cloud, I'd float over beds, sprinkling dreams over resting heads. Sleep is the potion for a mind so clear, it chases away every worry and fear. Kenny turned into a pair of dancing shoes on a stage. If I were shoes, not just any pair, I'd dance and leap in the fresh open air. Moving and grooving every day keeps the blues and aches at bay. A child, Leo, looking up at the floating islands, curious. Leo wondered, Kenny, is it true? Can these simple things make me feel brand new? Kenny smiled. Indeed, my friend, it's a golden path with no end. Leo climbs the ladder to the fruit tree. First, Leo tastes fruit so sweet, feeling energy from his head to his feet. Whoa, Leo laying on the cloud island, stars twinkling around. Next on a cloud, Leo took a nap, wrapped in dreams like a cozy cap. Leo dancing joyfully on the stage. Then in dancing shoes, Leo did twirl, his spirit free and his heart in a whirl. Leo and Kenny sitting on the edge of an island looking at the horizon. Thanks, Kenny, Leo said with glee, for showing the best ways to care for me.
Oh,
thank you for tuning into another
God.
That was amazing.
Now I have like 6 t-shirt ideas for Ted. Kenny the Kettlebell with floating islands and all of that. I'm thinking like an Illuminati Icelandic rune vibe for this one.
Okay.
Yep.
It's wild.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Misfit podcast. Thank you to our show sponsors. You can head to properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save on the best supplements in the game. Sharpentheaxeco.com. Use your favorite athlete code. You save money and you help them with their professional CrossFit journey. And as always, Misfit Athletics for your individual programming needs, teammisfit.com for your individual affiliate programming needs. See you next week. I couldn't say anything after that.
That was amazing.
Whoa.